Hi, I'm Mike from 1A Auto. We've been selling auto parts for over 30 years.
Hi everyone, Sue here at 1A Auto, and today we're going to show you how to remove the front wheel bearing on an 03 Tundra. You need any parts for your car? Click on the link below and head on over to 1aauto.com. Taking the wheel off, it's a 21mm socket. I like to loosen them up in the star pattern, even though that's how you mount them, I still take them off the same way. And make sure the weight of the vehicle's on the truck tire, and loosen up the lug nuts. We're not taking them all the way off, we're just loosening them. At home you can use a jack with jack stands. I have a 2-post lift I'll be raising my vehicle with. Now with the vehicle up in the air, it's safe for me to take the lug nuts off by hand. I'll just take them all off and then set them aside. Now with the lug nuts off, it's safe to pull the tire off. We're going to remove the ABS sensor, detach it from the knuckle. So the mounting bolt's a 10mm socket. I'm going to take that bolt out of there. Then we're going to disconnect the sensor's got a little pinch-in plastic connector on the bracket here. The reason we're taking it off is because when the knuckle has to go into the press, you can't have any electrical hanging out. It'll could damage it. I'm going to install this. Here we go, sorry. Then there's a bracket up on the upper control arm. That's just a 10mm socket to get that bolt out. And we're just going to pull the sensor out, roll it up, and put it on top of the strut tower to get it in a safe place. Just going to pull that sensor like this, wiggle it back and forth, and pull on it at the same time. It's got an O-ring where it seats inside that knuckle. You can use a flathead screwdriver if you can pry it gently. And that's the ABS sensor. It's got a magnet on the bottom. Roll that right up there. Make sure it stays out of danger. We're going to disassemble or dismount the front caliper, bracket, assembly, everything is one piece from the knuckle. The back mounting bolts are 17mm wrench. Bring it this way. I got more leverage with a ratchet and socket, so that's what I switched over to. Before we dismount the caliper completely and hang it with a bungee cord, I'm going to take out this lock clip, and I want it to have the flex and mobility to move over there. I'll take that out, and I can move that. Take the bracket off. Looks like someone's been in here and the bolt is broken on that bracket. Now I can dismount the caliper. Switched over to a ratchet wrench. Make this go a little faster. Now I can pry the caliper off, get my bungee cord ready. Don't want that to hang down, so see if you can hold it up in the air. I like to wrap the bungee cord around the inside. we're going to utilize the front coil spring. Just slide those in there. Perfect. That should be out of our way enough. I can discard the rotor, take that off. I'm going to take the dust cover off the axle nut area so I can get ready to take that. Might have to use a screwdriver on this because it is extra wide. When using a flathead screwdriver, you don't want to go into the cover. Kind of defeats the point of it. I'll try to straighten it out after. So now I might be able to get my cover wedge in there. There we go. Upper control arm ball joint. I'm going to take the cotter pin out because we have to take this whole knuckle out to do the bearing. So it looks like someone took a cotter pin and used or a piece of metal. No, it worked. And they just kind of made a makeshift L-shaped bracket. I guess it totally is better than nothing. I will say that. 19mm socket, and we're going to take off the upper ball joint nut. Put that castle nut aside. Before I disconnect the upper control arm from the knuckle, I'm going to take the axle nut off, so if the knuckle falls forward, it doesn't take any pressure on the axle shaft, CV shaft. I'm going to remove this cotter pin. And the cotter pin, I get castle nut. Well, then it's not really a castle nut. I think they call it a castle shield or lock shield. I gotta lower the vehicle to break the axle nut free. So I'm gonna put my pry bar in and break it. The axle nut is a 35mm socket. So I've set my pry bar up in the lug nuts, and I'm gonna pry counterclockwise and break this nut free. Once I take the nut out, I'll remove the pry bar and raise the vehicle back up to a good level to work on. I have to break the upper ball joint out of the control arm. So I'm going to hit it with a hammer right here and hope to vibrate the ball joint spindle shaft out. I don't want to use a pickle fork because I don't want to rip the boot. I'm not replacing the ball joint. So here goes nothing. And it worked. Cool. So just tap on the axle spindle so it doesn't pull out. Now I have exposed the mounting bolts for the lower ball joint. There's 4 of them. I'm going to just spray those real quick and then take those out and we'll have the knuckle out. The mounting bolts down here, 14mm socket. The tie rod end does not have to come off to take the knuckle out because it has the 4 bolts here. I didn't take it out by the ball joint stud. There's 4 of them. Backing plate on this has seen better days. I just put the top ball joint back into the control arm, with just finger tight on the threads so I can stop the knuckle from falling down. So I can hopefully hold this at a better angle. There we go. Like I said, there's 4 of them. 14mm socket. One more. And the knuckles turned. Here we go. Okay, we'll get all 4 out. Nope, 1 left. Okay, there we go. All 4 are out. Now we can support it, hold it best we can. Take that top castle nut back off. And we're going to slide it off the spindle. And there's our knuckle. So we're going to take the seal off now and start taking the bearing out and see what we get. Okay. That seal was, you can see the rubber was chewed and missed. So now I can't really see the bearing seat because of the centric ring. There's the seal. There's part of the rubber seal right there. So I think the next step we're going to have to do is press this hub out. Press the hub out of the bearing and then take the bearing out. Now that we have the knuckle all pressed, the knuckle all set up on the press, I have to push this centerpiece out. Not the big round piece, but the centerpiece, which is going to be the hub. So I fit a socket, nice impact socket that fits right in there, and we're going to push down on it. The spindle's been pushed down, so now I can take the spacer off. Just gonna see if I can tap it with a hammer out because it's gonna fall. Okay, let's get the black seal out of the way. So now I need to remove this seal. So we just pressed the hub out from this side, that way. And now to get the bearing out, I have to take this seal out and remove the lock clip, lock ring, shall I say. So I'm gonna go from this side, see if I can hammer it out. Okay, and there's the lock ring right there. Now to remove the lock ring, you can use lock ring pliers. I have great success with these needle nose pliers. So I'll squeeze the clip, and if you can't work it up like that, you can always use a small screwdriver. But I luckily got it up there, so I'm just gonna work this way around. I'm gonna hold on to it, because if not, once it reaches, it could fly away. So now that's the lock ring. We're gonna reuse that. It's in good shape. Set that aside. Now we can press this bearing out this way. So before I press the bearing out, I'm gonna take the ABS exciter ring out. And that's just, you grab onto it and pull it out. Let's see what we got here. You wanna examine it to make sure there's no cracks, no teeth missing. I ended up putting a ball joint tool in here to press this bearing out. We used a rotor to compensate for pieces of press equipment. Let's see if it works. Got one. Here we have the new wheel bearing from oneauto.com, and here is the wheel bearing that we just pressed out of our 03 Tundra. They look the same, pretty much, except that the 1A one, the manufacturer, is probably pretty close, if not still an OE. It has Japan stamped on it, and it has like an OE number. This has 0 numbers on it, except for some printed number that doesn't match up to anything. 1 number. And the bearing actually was coming apart, and it's fairly new. Someone has just put it in, and I can physically take it apart with my hand. So I'm hoping that it was just a low-grade model, and that solves our problem. And like I said, I really like this one from 1A Auto. So if you need this part, or any other part for your car, click on the link below and head on over to 1A Auto. Now I'm going to press in the new bearing in the knuckle. Before I put it and place it in there, I take a rag and I make sure that I have no rust, globs of grease, especially any foreign materials. You don't want any rust in there. It's not the best thing for the bearing. So get everything out. Looks pretty good. Now I'm gonna line up my bearing. You want to make sure that you press it in flush, as flush as possible. Yeah, sitting pretty steady. I'm going to use an aluminum block till I get it down as flush as I can. So the setup I have here, I have the new bearing in here. This is the old bearing, so that I can get on the outside diameter. This piece right here, literally, is what we want to push on. We don't want to push on the centerpiece of the new bearing. The old one's fine if I push on it. But this has to guide and push the outer down. We only need to go about another, maybe ½ an inch, so it seats itself. That sounded like it seated itself. Let's lift her up and take a look. Okay. Yep. Seated flush all the way around. Going to install the lock ring. So I like to put one piece in like that, get it to start to seat, go around. Then I'll use my pliers, give it a squeeze. No, this will happen. There we go. And it's locked in. I also got a new seal, inner seal from 1A Auto. You can get the whole kit or buy each piece individually. So now I'm going to install the inner seal. Just feel it around, see what it feels like. It's bottomed out. And we're good to flip it over and get ready to install the hub. It's really important when installing the hub, pressing it on. Now this is the back side of it. The hub's going to come through the other side. So this piece is going to be sliding inside this bearing piece, which you can see is a two-piece system. It's split. So if I was to simply slide that over this way and gets to that point, and now I have to, this bearing would be on this side. So you get two pieces of bearings. So I put it on like that, and say I just support this piece right here. If I put a bracket across here and start pressing this hub through, it's going to do this. It's going to push the center bearing right out. And now you've got a broken bearing and you got to start all over again. So you want to support this piece that the hub is getting pressed into. So by doing that, what I do is I take a ball joint press and I'll take the cup and I'll put it right in there, and I'll use the sleeve for height. And now when I flip it over on the vise, on my press, I've got an aluminum block here, and I'm going to be pushing this through the other side. So this will be the underneath setup that you can't see with your eyes. I think it is. So this is the setup, then I'm going to flip over and place on top of my aluminum block. There we go, just like that. I'm going to center it. Okay, so now I'm ready to put the new hub in. Center that. I ended up using my ball joint tool instead of an aluminum block on the top. The whole time I'm pressing this down, I'm watching this inner bearing to make sure it doesn't start to move. This should go in real smooth. It shouldn't really be too much strain. Okay. I'm gonna just take it out and take a visual, see what's going on. So once I got it down to the safe point, and that's when I stopped, I could feel it bottom out, then I took this piece out so that the hub could go right through the center of the bearing. This was stopping it. I like to do that just to see it. Now I know it's through the first stage. Now I could take this out, and I left just this cone underneath there. That's still supporting just the center of the bearing so that it doesn't push the center piece through. Now I can go to the next second stage of the hub. And there you have, the hub comes through, and it comes through on this model. Doesn't look like a normal hub sometimes, but that's because we have an ABS eccentric ring that has to go on. And then we have a spacer that goes on. And this spacer should get pressed on. Now we're going to put the new inner grease seal on. So see the staging on it? This piece sits down inside that hub. So the cup is facing up. Push it down the best I can with my hand. And I'm going to use a brass punch and work my way around. Yeah, we still got to really seat it over here. Beautiful. Now I'm going to put the spindle in the new bearing. Oh, look at that. That was like almost too easy. Okay, now I can line up the 4 bolts. Might have to pull on this. I think I'll get that side first and then come over to this side because I'm going to have to turn the wheel. Before I torque the bottom ball joint brace, I'm going to put the upper ball joint spindle through because just give it an all-around help. Ooh. Nice. $19mm socket, and hopefully we're not spinning. I do think we are. So I'm going to get a pry bar, pull down on that. There we go. Be good enough to torque it now. The torque on the upper ball joint is 77 foot-pounds. Yeah, looks like I lined it up too. Now I'm going to put the new cotter pin in. Normally you shouldn't have to hammer it in, but it's pretty rusty in there. So I just made it a little bit easier for me. Now with that flush like that, we're going to peel the top piece back. And I'm going to cut this about that length, long enough so that I can pin it over. Now I'm going to torque the lower knuckle to ball joint. The 4 bolts are 59 foot-pounds, and it's a 14mm socket. Okay, let's go to this side. Last one. Perfect. Now I'm going to put the axle nut on. You can see I started that by hand. Just going to go till it bottoms out. Now I'm going to put the rotor on and the caliper first before I lower it down and torque that. And because it's a new hub, I'm just going to throw some never sees on there. mainly around where it seats on the hub, because that's where the rust will form. It's not a new rotor, but it's just probably a good habit, huh? Perfect. I'm going to clean the actual surface on the rotor with a rag. This is where, because it's an old rotor, you want to stand clear of any rust piece like this. I've seen this through the years. It sits there. They mount it to the hub. When that goes down the road, it pulsates. So it is important to make sure you get all of that out of there. Just make sure there's no little pieces of rust stuck on the hub. Looks good. Perfect. I'm going to put 2 lug nuts on there to seat that. So it's easier for me to put the caliper on. Okay. Now we're ready to reinstall the caliper. Take the bungee cord off. Okay. Now make sure you notice how it twists. You don't want that flex hose all twisted up after you took it apart. There we go. Okay, we got a top mounting nut, bolt. Like usual, we'll do it by hand. Start it by hand. Bottom on the same way. So after I took this clip out is when I discovered that there was no bolts holding the bracket to the actual top part of the knuckle. They're broken off into the knuckle. So I'm just going to put the clip back on the flex hose and the bracket, and then I'm going to wire tie that bracket to this knuckle. And seat that clip down on that flex hose, and now we're going to get some plastic ties and tie that bracket to the knuckle. Now with my 17mm ratchet wrench, I'm just going to snug these caliper mounting bolts up, and then I'm going to torque them to this manufacturer's specs. Okay, so now I'm going to torque the caliper bracket bolts down, 17mm socket, and it is 90 foot-pounds. That would explain why it took a lot for me to take it off with my hand. Perfect. So I'm going to torque the axle nut, 35mm socket. The axle torque is 173 foot-pounds. Got my pry bar in there, and here we go. Perfect. So now we're ready to put the cotter pin, put the castle nut lock washer on. And perfect. And put the dust cap back on. Don't forget that. Let's see. There we go. Now I'm going to put the ABS sensor back in. And I'm going to look over this real quick, make sure there's no dirt or rust, make sure there's no metal rust stuck on the magnet piece. Looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little silicone on. There was a technical service bulletin online about this, about the ABS sensor, I'm sorry, not seating properly in the knuckle. So I want to make sure I get a good seat on that. And I can see that the O-ring has a little tear in it right there. And I want that piece staying there. So I'm going to put a little silicone paste on there so I can reassure myself. That's something we're going to really take a look at after we bolt it down. I want to make sure that's seated down all the way. You can see probably, I don't know if you can see from there where you're at. I'm going to make sure there's no dirt again. Every second, right up to the last minute, right, put it right in there. Seat it right down. That's as flush as it seems like it's going to be. I get the mounting bolt. I'm going to put that mounting bolt in. There we go. Start it by hand. That's a 10mm socket. Once it's bottomed on, I'm just going to really tighten her up. Okay. Now I'm going to put the ABS clip back in the bracket. Poke it through. Yep, the ears went through. Put this in the bracket. And that pinch bracket. And then up on top on the control arm, there's a metal bracket with a 6mm bolt, threaded bolt, and that's a 10mm socket. Tighten that down. Okay, now we're ready to put the wheel on. So I'm just taking a couple two little small wire ties and I'm tying this bracket onto the knuckle. Only because it was resting there and someone had broken off the mounting bolt a while ago, a long time ago, pre-rusted. So that was just floating there and it seemed to stay there, but I don't want my last time I touched it, so I want it to be stable. I don't want it to fall down and hit the tire and rub and wear out the flexos or the steel line. That's a safety issue. So now I'll cut the plastic tabs off. Now I can take the lug nuts off by hand here. My rotor is seated and I can reinstall the wheel. Now it's time to put the tire back on. This is an alloy wheel, so you have a seat on the lug nuts. And that aluminum, the metal piece, goes into the aluminum, so definitely do it by hand, guide it in, and know that it's seated. I do 2 of them, and that way when I go to lower it and tighten it, it's not off center. Now with my lug nuts hand tightened and the truck on the ground, pressure on the tire, so the truck's not fully lowered, just pressure on the tire. I'm going to torque each lug nut to 110 foot-pounds. That's the manufacturer torque specs for this vehicle. I'm going to tighten in the star pattern. Just seats on the hub properly. I like to double check one last time. And you're all set.
Thanks for watching. Visit us at oneauto.com for quality auto parts, fast and free shipping, and the best customer service in the industry.